Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 121. And we are coming at you with the one, the only, defending Adult Forms Warrior Cup champion, Esteban Tremblay. Esteban, go ahead and say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be on the show and can't wait to talk about the weekend.
Awesome. I just want to start with a few housekeeping things for the podcast. I know that a lot of the viewers are used to like a weekly podcast coming out. And I mentioned this on the show when Ross Levine was on to start season 4. But the podcast is going to be a little bit less consistent. Sometimes we'll come at you randomly on a Saturday. We might go through a few weeks where we've got one every week, or we might wait for a few weeks in preparation for a really big one, like if we're going to do another game night or something of that effect. But basically, it's because I've started my medical school rotations. I am coming at you live from Hawaii today. Obviously, Esteban's up in Canada. That's why I'm rocking the Hawaiian shirt. I felt that it was only appropriate because I'm out here doing a clinical rotation at a Tripler Army Medical Center. So that is the housekeeping for what's been going on with the podcast. But I know at the end of the day, y'all don't care about that as much as you care about talking to this man right here and the Warrior Cup that he just won. So Esteban, first, just tell the audience a little bit more about you. Maybe somebody's tuning in that hasn't watched much sport karate before. So just tell them about where you're from, what team you represent, all that.
Good. Well, like we said, I'm Esteban Tremblay. I'm now 18 years old. I'm from Quebec, Canada. And I've been doing sport karate since I've been doing sport karate since I was 5. Technically karate since I'm 3. So basically my entire life, because my dad and my mom have a karate school, so they brought me into it as soon as they can, and I fall in love with the sport. I love all weapon manipulation. I love the tricks. I love all the technique that is in the sport and all that stuff. So I'm still working on it today, still trying to be the best and all that stuff. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And what a great journey you've had. And I'm sure that as we talk about this, we'll get into, at one point, a kid that didn't speak very much English with hair over his eyes doing double bow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. We got to find an old picture of that. Hopefully, I've talked to Esteban before the show, and hopefully his dad's going to make it home by the end of the podcast. And we'll
see. I don't think so because the local tournament is not over yet. So.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, maybe we'll get lucky, but if not, then I'm sure we'll have Mr. Tremblay on the show another time. I know he's interested in doing an episode of Game Night, so maybe we'll get him on the show to be a contestant in that. But anyway, let's jump into what just happened this weekend, right? So tell us about your weekend in Chicago. Obviously, we know that you won the Adult Forms Warrior Cup, and we're going to talk about that specifically. But everything leading up to that, how'd your weekend go?
Well, obviously, Chicago was my first. Well, no, it wasn't my first tournament as an adult. It was my second because I competed in Toronto in the adult. But it was the start of a new season. It was the start of my new season in the adult. So it had a special feeling into it because even though I was used to switch division, if I go from 14 to 15 to 16, 17, well, it didn't have the same meaning. It's not. When you're in the junior and you switch division, it's going to get harder. You're going to get some new people, but it's usually people you already competed against because when you were even younger, you saw them in the runoff or anything like that. So it didn't have major impact. If you were capable of winning, I feel like there wasn't that much of a change. But when you're in the adults, basically everyone was there. Like the division this weekend were crazy good. Even in CMX form or weapon, it's not something that it's not the same energy that you have in junior. There's a lot more people, and I feel that because we don't have runoff, the division by themselves, compared to the one we compete in junior, have a really different vibe because they know that if they win, they directly go on stage. So with that energy, that vibe and everything, it surely was a lot of pressure because you want to do well in your first year of adult, right? So I competed there, started with it'll mess up in weapon, maybe stress or something. And then second division, I did creative, not bladed. We're gonna talk about that
I
later.
want to talk about that more. Let's go ahead and stop there and talk about creative bladed, because your whole career you've been known as a bow guy, and then all of a sudden Toronto, now Chicago, you show up and do commas. So one, what's the inspiration for that? And number two, how's it going?
Well, people don't know that, but actually my first weapon was camo before I like even started doing bow. Well, it was camo technically because it was just my open end form with camo in my hand when I was like 5. So technically the first weapon I touched was camo, and then I transitioned to the bow staff. But since then, I didn't stop manipulating the weapon. You know, I've been teaching camo, I've been messing around with them, and still looking at the competitor who compete in tournaments to see what are they doing, how you strike with it, what's the new trend, new release, all that stuff, right? And then as more as the adult division were coming closer, well, as I thought about the division, about creative bladed, and was like, well, I think that's could be an idea, could probably compete there as well. So I started thinking about it like 1 year ago, and about 6 months ago, I started training and creating my form. Didn't have much expectation while creating the form. It was more for fun. It was like, if something happened, well, I'm still in the division. I'm gonna have fun playing with another weapon. It's gonna clear my mind between all my bow staff division. So I was like, why not? And then I trained a little bit. I went to a local tournament, did the form, and it turns out that it performed way better than I thought. So I looked up at the form and I was like, well, there's some improvement. There's a lot of improvement to do, but I didn't thought I was able to perform something like that like in 2 months. So I start really training harder and harder about on the form so I can perform it in Toronto in the adult. Unfortunately, I dropped, but I was still happy with how it looked. My cuts getting cleaner and all that stuff. And then here comes AKA. I compete in creative bladed, and I got placed second. I mean, behind Dawson Holt, it's not bad, I think, right? So I was really happy with the result because I really put in the work. I just didn't like. I didn't just take a pair of camo and like, oh, okay, I'm gonna try something. No, I've been working with the form for like 6 months or so. So I'm really happy with the result. I didn't expect to win first in that division right away, but I feel that more and more I compete in the creative bladed, more and more there's chance for me to be able to win the division as well.
That's awesome. And like you said, getting second to Dawson Holt, who's like the incumbent guy reigning over the creative bladed division from last year. There's no shame in that whatsoever. So it's going to be interesting if there's ever, I mean, we can assume that most of the time you'll wind up winning one of your bow divisions because you've got 3 of them, right, between extreme and musical and creative. So most of the time on stage, we'll see you doing bow, but technically it's possible at some point we'll see you in the finals doing comma, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, we'll see at the moment if it happens. But I take the feeling that I had before going on the division with my camo, it felt weird. Even though I was prepared, I literally compete my entire life with a bow staff. So when I was like minding myself before going on the ring, I just needed to like tell my brain, okay, you're not doing a bow form. You have 2 weapons in your hand. That's all you strike now. You're not doing forward strike, up, down, side, side. That's not how it work, right? So that was kind of weird because like manually my brain was like thinking about stuff that was like, no, you don't need to think about that. You're doing a camo form, not bow. So that was one weird thing. I feel like if I go on stage, I'm gonna have a lot of like not it's not gonna be a trouble, but I need to like set my mind into it and be like, okay, you're doing something completely different. Try that, and I feel like it's gonna be a whole other experience. Like if it would be the first time I was on stage, because it's the first time I do that type of form on stage. So it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be hype for me because I'm like, okay, I'm trying something new, but at the same time, I feel like it's gonna be a lot of pressure because okay, I'm on stage with Kama. Well, people are interesting of what I'm gonna do. You gotta go and do something good.
Right. No, I mean, I've been in that situation a little bit before, right? Because obviously not doing a different weapon, I've only ever competed with bow other than super forms at New England, which doesn't really count, right? But I had one experience at Quebec, 2019, I think it was. And I was on stage for weapons too, and that was fine. But I won Korean forms. And so I was on stage for the traditional forms overall, and it was my Korean form, which, I was doing it because I thought I was good enough to win it, right? That's the reason I was doing it. But I was against Joey Castro's Japanese form. And so my chances of being able to pull off that win on stage were pretty slim. But it was weird, like walking up there and not having a bow in my hand was weird. And like as a kid, I was on stage for traditional forms a lot. Like when I was a junior, a lot of people forget this or just don't know this. I was known for traditional forms before I was known for bow. My first time on stage was for traditional forms. But still, like, it had been years since I was that guy. So going on stage in the adult division without a bow in my hand was super strange. So I can only imagine what it would feel like to go up there with another weapon.
Yeah, right.
See what that feels like. So I want to fast forward a bit through the weekend. We get to the Warrior Cup finals, and you had a bow in your hand for the first Warrior Cup final. Jake Presley, who was the defending champion, he was going first. You were going second right after him, and then it was a stacked division after that as well. So just tell us the story of your experience in that division, how you felt about your form, and then, of course, the way it played out.
Well, I definitely need to bring something new on my CMX weapon form because I couldn't do any tricks, I couldn't do the Webster catch or anything like that because I won creative and not any extreme division or musical, right? So I went for some new creative paths that I didn't try before on stage. It went well. I'm pretty happy with the result of my form. I felt pretty great when I did it. I mean, at first it was kind of weird because my mindset was it was the first division, right, for the Warrior Cup finals. So when I was on stage, that was like because it's weapon and I'm known for weapon, and people, if they were like their need to choose, oh, is he gonna win form or weapon, people would probably say weapon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was on stage and I was preparing myself, I kind of felt like it was my only shot. Well, that's what I was trying to tell my mind, to like perform at my best and not be like, oh, well, if I mess up or anything, well, I have CMX form as well, right? So I was minding myself to do the best that I can do. Was telling myself, okay, that's your only shot, do the form of your life. And I'm pretty happy with all it turned out. Unfortunately, I didn't win, but I feel like my form was great. So.
Mm-hmm. And you say something there that's so fascinating because I thought this way as a competitor as well. Because most people, they would want to take the pressure off themselves, right? Most people would want to have that mentality of, I've got another division, let me just go do my best in this one and put the pressure off of them for the weapons division where obviously there's the risk of a drop, right?
Yeah.
But what I agree with and what you said was you wanted the pressure, right? You made yourself think this is the chance. This is where it's all or nothing, right? So tell us a little bit about that mentality and how you embrace that pressure. Because like I said, I felt that as a competitor, but among the people that I coach and the people that I talk to, there's not very many people who think the way that you and I do about that.
Well, I feel that if you think about the fact that you have another shot, you're not gonna perform as well. You don't need to think that you have two shot. It's two completely different division, and when I go on stage and I perform for weapon first and then form, well, I don't even think about form at all, and that makes my performance go 10 times better because I'm like that's like I'm even though I know and I'm going on stage again, I'm telling my mind, okay, that's the only time you're going on stage for weapon. You got to do your best, and it's bring like kind of a good feeling to your form. When you know it's your last shot, you know that you need to perform. It add that pressure that becomes like kind of adrenaline, stress, and all that stuff that sometimes for me work pretty well and make me do some of my best performance, right? So that's really like the thing I'm trying to have when I'm going on stage for weapon and I'm going after for forms. When I'm for weapon, I'm like, okay, that's the only shot I have for weapon. Don't think about forms. Go on stage, do your thing, and perform like the only time you're going on stage for this evening, right?
I love that. And while we're talking about, I guess, some of these like similarities in philosophy and in mindset that we have, there's something else that I noticed, particularly at Warrior Cup when you took the stage, that I don't really see from a whole lot of other people. And it was something that in my career, I made it part of my routine, right? And as anybody who watched me knows, like I would always come up on stage and then kind of like walk a lap of the stage and like do a big yell. And it's kind of uncommon, right? Like not many people do that. And of course, I know what my mindset was for doing it, but I see you come out on stage and really act very similar to the way that I used to act, right? The way you come out on stage, the way you walk, the way you carry yourself, the way that you yell at the crowd, right? So put us in your mind, right? When you're doing that, when you're taking the stage, the music hasn't started yet, your form hasn't started yet. What are the things that you're thinking about? What are you channeling in that moment?
Well, the reason why I do this is the same reason as, okay, example, if you think that you're going to win, there's a way more chance that you're going to actually win, right? But if you're telling yourself you're not good, you're not going to win, well, you're not going to win. And it's working for other people as well. If you're going on stage and you demonstrate that, okay, I want to win, I think I'm the best in that division, and I'm going to give everything I have. You know, when you're doing that Bill yell, when you're going on stage, is to show people, like, I'm confident of what I'm doing, and I'm going to perform my best and, like, enjoy the show. That's what it means. So when you go on stage, you want to get people into your performance before you even perform. So people are captivated about what you're going to do, and it's going to bring in all other energy when you're doing your form. So that's the reason why I'm doing it. It's not just performance. Well, it is performance, but it's also just telling people, look at me. I'm going to do the best form I ever did and enjoy the show.
It was beautifully said, spot on. And I think that I'll expand on that and say, for me, it was always about ownership, right? If you just walk on the stage and do your form and come off stage, you're borrowing the stage, right? You get the stage for that moment, right?
Yeah.
But when you come up on stage and you walk around the stage and you yell and you engage the crowd before your form ever starts, that's not borrowing the stage. You own the stage, right? There's a huge difference between being on stage and doing your thing and owning the stage. And oftentimes, whoever it is that owns the stage the most is the person who's going to come away with that division. And so that's another really good way to think about it. And really the reason we talk about this stuff on the show is for all of you young competitors who are tuning in and you see guys like myself several years ago or guys like Esteban now coming up on stage and acting like that, and you're sitting in the stands getting hype about it. We also want you to understand the mentality behind it. Why do we do that? What does it do for us? How does it help us be successful? And I think that's a really important aspect of this conversation. But now we pivot to the part that I know you want to talk about most. Now we've got men's forms, right? So tell us about men's forms, how you felt about the form itself, which was phenomenal, landed the shuriken cutter, crushed it, right? And then tell us about, of course, how it feels when your name is called and you get to step up and kiss that Warrior Cup.
Well, before going to talk about the finals and all that stuff, we need to talk about elimination. Because it wasn't easy to go into the World Cup final, right? I was against a lot of good competitor, Shaquan, Saleh, Dawson. So to manage to win both extreme and musical division, well, I was really happy because it made my job easier for the CMX part of it, right? Um, but also that was I was really proud, even prouder than I think Weapon, because it really proved that even if I was a junior last year and I come to the adult, well, I can still win both CMX form divisions. So I was really proud of myself there, and it made me it created a confidence for me to go on stage and be like, okay, I know I'm gonna win this one as well, right? The same mindset I had with Weapon, even though it didn't work, but um, it worked for the forms one. So I go on stage. For this one, I chose a different energy. The it was different from my Weapon Warrior Cup final. For the Weapon one, like we said, I went on stage, did the big yell, try to like get the crowd into it and all that stuff. Um, but when I'm doing a form, CMX form, I'm trying to stay more calm, but still walking on stage with, I would say that, this interesting way of walking in, and just people can actually see how like calm I'm at, and like there's no thought in my mind. I'm just doing my thing. So I walk straight into the middle, going directly to the judges, look up, and be like, okay, I'm gonna win this thing. So there was two different walk up to stage between those two finals, but it came to the same mentality. It's a way you walk on stage for people to see that you really want it. But for this one, I chose the one that I like for forms, and is that I look really focused and I'm into what I'm gonna do. And then doing my form, all my routine, like you said, I did the shuriken color. Um, Little story about the shuriken color. Because of the adrenaline and all that stuff that I had on stage, I wasn't used to have that much height when I'm doing the trick. So when I like did the second hook kick, I was kind of confused of like how high I was in the air, and for a second I needed to like really spot the floor and be like, man, don't fall on that. Like you need to land this clean. I didn't mess up or anything, but I like for a fraction of a second my brain was like, you're not used to get that high. Be careful. So I was aware of that, but I still landed the trick clean and all. Did the rest of my form. I did a little more creative space to it. I did one big trick. Well, I did my opening trick, but in my form there was actually just one big trick. It was the shuriken cutter, and the rest of the form that was a part of my strategy. Is I wanted to put some flips, some kick, but adding it in the different way that some other don't. Like I did this little before the cheat 720. I did this little like cart aerial with the front swing leg at the beginning.
I love that. Yeah.
I like doing those kind of trick, even though it's not the artist trick you can like do. It's really interesting, and it's keeping the mind of the judges on what you did. Like it's gonna they're gonna notice that even though it's not the artist trick you can do.
Sometimes being unique is better than doing the most difficult thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I did my form, and I was really proud of my performance and all, and went on stage, heard my name, and the difference between that Warrior Cup and I will say many other like big award I won in my career, example ISK or Junior Diamond Ring. the difference was, for example, ISKA, first time I was on stage was for traditional weapon. The first time I competed for an ISKA, I won. The first time I was in the final for the diamond ring, I won. So it was the first time for both of them. Doesn't mean I'm not proud for that, but you know, it was, how to say it, it wasn't easy, but I didn't have to work as hard as I did for the Warrior Cup. For the Warrior Cup, I've been on that stage many times. I think it was 3 years ago. I was in CMX Weapon against Jake again, but I dropped there. Last year, I was in the CMX form, and I did a little mess up. So every time I went on that stage, it didn't go as planned, but like not at all. I always did a mistake. So just at first, just the fact of landing both of my form perfectly, that was already like a win for me. And then when I heard my name, and because of what I said, it wasn't the first time I was in the final. Well, I wasn't the final for the Warrior Cup. That was my first time in the final for Warrior Cup, but it was my first time. It wasn't my first time on that stage.
Right.
If that makes sense. But yeah, because I feel in NASKA you have 3 big awards. It's ISKA, Diamond Ring, and Warrior Cup. Because it was my last one to get, well, just earring. It's not like earring. Okay, you won everything, but it's earring like you achieve one of the biggest goal that you ever wanted, right? I visualized that Warrior Cup for an entire year since last year when I lost to Aiden Kennedy, right? I trained that's me. Actually, I want to talk about that a little bit. Losing against Aiden Kennedy made me work on my CMX forms a lot harder than I was used to. I knew I had shot, but I didn't knew I had that big of a shot because I won one of the division, Aiden won the other one, and I didn't think I was that good in CMX at first, and then that made me realize, well, I can perform as well as they do. So I started working really hard for that form. Started doing more tricking, going to open gym and all, leveling up my tricking, and also my hand technique are cleaner now. Trying to add some more creative pass in the form. So I was really happy just being able to land the form, hit the form on stage, and like we could see when I normally when I finish a form, I go with directly like a big yell going to too fast movement, like, oh, I saw. But on that one, I really like appreciate the moment of like, oh yes, I hit the form, let's go. So that's why I went for too like slow movement. I really took the time to like get everything I had in my system, and the last 2 ki I did on my form wasn't just ki, it was more like a relief, a way of me telling people like, yes, I hit my form, it was great, I'm happy. Like that was what I was going for when I ended my form. And when I, like we said earlier, I'm pointing over there, you know why, because
you can show the people. There we go.
We got the cop here, right? But when I heard my name, it had really a special feeling. One of the most unique feeling I ever had while competing. More unique than every other award I won. So I was just so happy for be able to actually call myself a Warrior Cup winner.
That's awesome. A beautiful story from start to finish, dating all the way back to the last Warrior Cup and how that loss inspired you and helped you realize that, like, hey, this is something I could really do. And then all the training and the effort that you put in. And then last year, having almost a perfect season, right? I mean, you won the vast majority of the overall grands in forms as a guy who's known as a weapons competitor. And now to bring that full circle and win a forms Warrior Cup, before you win a Weapons Warrior Cup. That's just crazy, right? And it's just so exciting to see now as you move forward through the rest of the season and the rest of your career, you're going to have more Weapons Warrior Cup finals that you're a part of. Now you've got the career big three of Warrior Cup, ISKA, Diamonds. Can you try to fit it into one season, right? Which is one of the most difficult things to do in all of sport karate is to win those three things in 1 year. I was talking to Carmichael Simon recently. This was probably like last week, and we were just talking about like what the big three was in different generations, because it wasn't always the way that we had it, right? Yeah. We see our big three as the Warrior Cup, the U.S. Open, and the Diamonds. Carmichael talked about how back in the day, Bluegrass Nationals was in that conversation. Battle of Atlanta was in that conversation, which, by the way, shout out to Battle of Atlanta because they've really come along as one of the premier tournaments over the last several years, and it's kind of reasserting themselves as one of those greatest, most prestigious events in the world. But anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent too much. Incredible story, lots of inspiration. And now for kind of the second half of the podcast, I want to shift to some of the more fun stuff that like we don't always talk about on the show that people just don't necessarily realize. And we will get into some like maybe controversial stuff here too, but we'll start with an easy one, right? And this is just like your classic interview question. What are like the top 3 songs on your playlist when you're backstage at the night show, warming up, getting ready to go win a Warrior Cup? What are like the top 3 songs that you've got on repeat?
Well, that's actually interesting because my musical taste changed a lot during the entire year. If you like listen to the song I'm listening at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, it's totally different. I'm listening to totally different artists. If there's like one song that I'm always listening just to like get my mind into things, it's Warrior that of Imagine Dragons. It's I don't know how to explain it, but it has a feeling to like really get yourself together and be like, okay, I'm gonna win this thing. I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna go on stage and like perform for people, and it's really motivational and all that stuff. So that's one of the song I'm like pretty much always putting before I go on stage. But for the rest, I cannot do a top 3 because it's always like changing. But I can say something though, is that a lot of songs that I'm listening to, it's weird, but it's Russian song because they have a vibe into it that I feel not a lot of American artists can actually recreate. So 2 of them, my favorite artists, Miyagi and Confuse, those 2 are Russian rapper, and the vibe into the song gives you like create a mood of it's making you capable of like really totally relax before you're going on stage. So those are like the song I'm listening to.
Do you speak Russian?
Not that much, but a lot of my friends are Russian, so I know some word and I can like say hi, but that's it.
That's hilarious. I love it. All right, let's see. What's next on my list of the? Okay, so now we'll get into one of those that I guess potentially could get controversial depending on where it goes, right? So after this tournament, more than maybe any tournament that I've ever seen, there was a lot of talk on social media, and it wasn't just stuff about Warrior Cup and the way they did things. It wasn't even necessarily directed at the tournament. It's just this is the tournament that a lot of this conversation happened after, right? Yeah. And a lot of different topics across the NASKA circuit from a bunch of different people from a bunch of different teams talking about ways that the sport could be better, talking about things that are within sport karate that they don't like right now. And so I just wanted to ask you the simple question as one of those guys who's at the top right now. What would you say is the biggest thing, or if you've got a couple of things, where do you think sport karate needs to improve the most? What is like the 1 or 2 things that could change that would help the sport grow more in the way that we want it
to? Well, just to start off, I feel like there's a lot of complaint. I saw what people writing online and all after Warrior Cup, and I feel there's a lot of complaint that are said that are not necessarily true. But there's definitely some fix that we need to do to improve the sport. The biggest one I would say would be clarification on the rules. We have rules. We know the rules, but sometimes it always happens. At least it's not the fault of the promoter or the judges or anything. It's just the way that it is all written. It feels like every tournament there's always like a loophole. Where it's not specifying the rules, so you can do that, or it's creating question for the judges, and sometimes they need to stop the division for a long period of time, and it's not something that we need to see in the sport right now. It's on the sport that you have a big advantage going last because you're the last person that the people have seen, so the judges have you in the brain. Well, if you stop the division for like 30 minutes, well, the people that went first, even though they are the best, it's still hard. Even though they've written notes and all on their sheet, well, yeah, you can know. Okay, you did that. I like this, and you did a little stumble. But about the performance aspect of a form, you cannot write this down, right? Yeah, you can write like I like the performance, but you cannot like feel what you feel when you were watching the performance.
And it wears off the more time passes.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about that in the rules, I want to talk about something that happened this weekend. It's not anyone's fault. I just want to say that first, okay? It was just a big situation that we need to clarify. But Rashad in, I think it was CMX musical weapon.
Stage breaking, right? The stage breaking, right?
Yeah, exactly. He land on his cart full, break the stage, and yeah, he did a little stumble, but it's normal. The stage broke, and like he continued his form, but at the end, he told the judges I think I broke the stage. They removed the mat. They saw the stage going down like this. I think it's not anyone's fault. It's not Rashad's fault. It's not the tournament. Stuff happens, right?
Yeah, it just happened. Exactly.
But about that, in the rules, there's nothing, but it's normal, but there's nothing said what happened if someone break the stage. Well, I mean, it's normal. If I were the only person to create NASKA rules, I wouldn't write something like, if the stage is broken, you got to do this. No one's going to think about it, right? But after this weekend, I think it would be a good idea to like add a new rule of what exactly you guys want to do if something like that happened. Not necessarily just a stage breaking, but something happens.
Something you could write it generally, right? It could be if something happens that is out of the competitor's control as determined by the judges, right? Like let the judges conference and determine, could the competitor have possibly avoided this? And if the answer is no, then let them rerun, right? I mean, I think that the closest thing that we have to it currently that's a topic of debate is a broken weapon, right? With bow in particular, there are some bow breaks that are the competitor's fault, right? If you have your hands too close together and you hit and you break the skinny part of the bow, that's on you, right? But if your hands are in
too hard while you strike,
right. If your hands are in reasonably good position and you just hit hard and the bow breaks, there's nothing you can do about that. You know what I mean? The majority, well, it's hard to say majority with bow, right? Because there are a lot of breaks that happen because people hold their bow wrong. That does happen, right? And either way, that's kind of a judgment call. But let's forget the bow part of this, right? If somebody's doing commas, and I've seen this happen, and their comma blade flies off the end of their comma,
it's not their fault.
It's not their fault. There's nothing they could have done about that, right? Yeah. So with the broken weapon rule in general, I've never understood why it's a disqualification, especially if you keep going. Like if you're able to continue the form, how is it possibly a disqualification, right? But it's just things like that. Anything that happens that is outside of the competitor's control should not affect the outcome of the division. You know what I mean? And it led to kind of a weird situation where I'm pretty sure in musical, Rashad wound up winning. And it's this whole debate of like, well, yeah, there was a stumble, but the stumble was not Rashad's fault.
Yeah, that's what I think. What happened is that they told the judges, okay, well, you can judge him without like removing the stumble. But no offense to Rashad or anything. Like, he did great. I didn't say he didn't deserve the win or anything, but it's just hard to figure out that when someone did something and you're telling yourself, okay, imagine that he didn't do that. Like,
pretend that what happened didn't happen, and now
exactly. Like, okay, you can't imagine he didn't stumble and not penalize him for that, but it still happened. Right. You know? So that was the first part. I was like, man, I didn't really care because I dropped in that division. So I was just like letting the thing go. I was watching the show, honestly. But I feel for all the other competitor because that break, the stage breaking led us into like a 30-minute break in the division. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of time. I think all the competitor before wasn't remembered that well and couldn't get like the score they deserved. Not fault to any of the judges or anything like that, but it's just normal. You don't remember as well a form if it's 30-minute pass from the division.
But if there was a rule in place, there's no 30-minute stoppage. It's, okay, this is what we do in this type of a situation. Judges make your call. Okay, he gets to rerun. Rashad, sorry, you got to do it again. Do your thing, and then we take it from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
The other option is, this is probably the better rule, make it competitor's choice, right? Like, let's say the stage had broken and it only caused like a tiny little stumble. Don't make Rashad rerun. Be like, hey, man.
They can decide,
go again. And he can say, no, I'll take what I did. I was happy with it, right? I'm going to take my chances. Or he can say, you know what? I'll take the opportunity to go do it again. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I do think that that's a good way to handle it. And I think that was one of the topics of discussion, because I think there was other things that happened on the weekend with that same broken stage.
I think even if we're not talking about the stage or anything, I feel like throughout the entire weekend, when there was problem, it was because of loophole in the rules. Like, oh, is it this or is it that? We are not sure, right? Right. So I think that's why I said clarified the rule would be one of the major thing you can do to improve the sport. But a lot of time it's situation on situation, and you got to figure out it on the spot. But to finish with the story I was telling, the other thing I questioned myself is that because the stage broke and they needed time to fix it, we switched spot during the division. So the first half of the division was on stage. Then the stage broke, and we went on the mat on the side. First of all, the mat was smaller. Mm-hmm. Second of all, we had more height. So if I would have competed on those mats, I would have done the same form that I did on that stage. On stage, I did a new variation of zero gravity two spin. Mm-hmm. But if I would have been on the mats on ground, I would have probably tried a Webster catch. And we don't know if I would have catch it or not, but still, I would have not done the same form. I would have done something different. And that was the question I was asking myself. Like, okay, if you're going in the optic, you can make Rashad redo his form. Well, can I redo my form as well? I would have done something else.
Yeah, because it changes the setting of the division. Exactly. Because in the weapons division, it's not uncommon for particularly bow competitors to change what they are going to do depending upon the setting that they're in. If there's a chandelier in the front left corner of the ring, guess what? You're not doing a release in the front left corner.
You're not doing triple spin.
Exactly. So I think that's a valid point, and I do think it sounds obscure, but that category of issues comes up frequently enough once every 3 or 4 tournaments, right? Maybe not to the extent that it did at Warrior Cup, right? But similar issues do come up, and I feel like there could be a rule that could cover that. So now I want to pivot to another fun conversation. And by the way, as we shift into some of these fun topics, this is where we really want some discussion down in the comments. So thank you to everybody that's commented so far. But now join the conversation with Esteban and I as we pivot to this one, right? So another one is, I talk about film study all the time on the podcast, right? And as somebody who's very, very good in weapons, obviously very, very good in forms now winning the Warrior Cup, right? Give us some of those names of people that you go back and you do film study on. What videos do you reference when you're looking for inspiration for your forms, or you're trying to make your hand combos or something like that better? Who are some of the people that you go on YouTube and you search up?
Well, I could talk about a lot of inspiration I get for forms and bow staff. Like for forms, I have a lot of inspiration from Madam Egg, but let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the inspiration I got for Kama, because
Ooh.
I needed to like inspire myself, even though I knew like what I wanted to put in my form. Still, I wanted to like be unique and getting inspired from all the best competitor, right? So a lot of I saw some Cole Presley, Mackenzie, but one that stuck up to me was Michaela Johnson. I really liked the way that she moved while she was performing. All those like releases, taps thing, those were really nice. So I did add a release tap in my form. So she is one of the competitor I love to study, because I don't think there was a lot of competitor that did Kama like she did. She had her own style of moving, of doing her trick, and it was really fun to like, okay, let's see, okay, she did that, and like getting inspired by something that we are not used to see. Because even if I because Cole Presley was like the last I will say that the last competitor we've seen really often on stage with Kama, okay?
Right, especially in the men's division. Absolutely.
I feel like a lot of other competitors have a similar style because of that. I feel that's the same case with Alex, Philip Bromet, all those type of competitor have. Well, Alex and Philip have a different style, but I feel like those two style are really like growing through the sport. So if I wanted to do a Kama form in Creative Bladed, well, I didn't want to look like them, but I wanted to look different. And when I re-saw, because I knew who she was, when I saw some video of Michaela, I was like, I think I like that style. I want to up to do something that looked like this. And I really got inspired and studied a lot of video of her. And
right. And I want to point out, that's one of the greatest compliments, right? Essentially what you're saying is Alex recently has been winning a lot in the men's division. Obviously, Cole before that was the one who was winning the most with Kamas in the men's division. So you've got Alex, who's been winning most recently with Kamas. You've got, I mean, Rashad wins with Kamas too, but most of the time on stage he does double bow, right?
Yeah.
And then in the juniors, you've got Philip. And so when you've got those guys who are winning so consistently and being so impressive with Kamas and Alex and Philip, a lot of other people in the sport start to replicate their game after that, because everybody's like, hey, look at how much Philip wins. Look at how much Alex wins. I want to be like them, right? And so what you're saying, by going back and finding somebody in history who, by the way, Michaela Johnson, until Avery won the Forms Warrior Cup this weekend, Michaela Johnson's the last girl that I can think of to win a Junior Warrior Cup.
I think so, yeah.
Right? It's when we were teammates. And so, like, in many ways, this is a Michaela Johnson stand podcast, right? Because I talk about, like, people need to appreciate what she did for Kama releases, because a lot of the releases that she did in that 2010-11 time frame was, like, way, way ahead of her time in terms of the releases that Kama people do today, right? So I think it's really cool that you went back and you kind of film studied her to inform what you were going to do with Kamas. I think that's awesome. Now I want to shift the conversation to forms, because forms is the Warrior Cup that you won, right? And on every podcast under the sun, whether it's a basketball podcast or a football podcast or whatever, the thing that everybody loves to talk about most is giving top fives, right? So I think recently on the show, I know like with Rashad we did it, we've done like top 5 common competitors, stuff like that. As the reigning adult forms Warrior Cup winner, who would be your top 5 forms competitors, extreme forms competitors, CMX forms competitors, however you want to label it, all time?
This is hard. First of all,
I'll bail you out. I'll share some of mine too. I got to think of it on the spot. I should have thought about this beforehand, but I'll banter with you.
By the way, just before saying any names, I'm not doing a list in the order I think.
That's fair.
Whatever. Okay, it's just name I'm throwing because I thought of them in that order. Okay, it's hard to anyway. It's really hard to say. Okay, he is the best forms competitor of all time. But if I have to say some names, I will say one of the greatest competitor would be Matt Emig. For creativity wise, and for the trick he was performing, because I love how he was doing his form. Like, he didn't actually put the artist trick he was capable of doing, but sometimes he was doing a simple trick but making it difficult, like when he did the cork, grab the leg, spin around, punch technique, right? I mean, a corkscrew, it's not that difficult of a technique, but if you're performing it like he did, then it becomes like something that only him can do, right? So that's one of the things that makes him really special. And talking about Matt, let's talk about Mark Canonizato. I feel like he had an energy in his form that not a lot of competitor was able to get when they're performing. All his kick, it's hard to explain, but even if he was kicking fast, the way that he was kicking, it looks slow but clean at the same time. Yeah, you know what I mean, right?
Almost effortless. Like, he made tricking look effortless. Yeah.
Like, he was just doing like a pop shuriken or something, and you could see the entire leg going, and it almost like seemed slow, but it was just because it was so clean and effortless. So that's one of the reasons why I put him there. If we talk now about like performance, I would say Steve Terrata. It's also, we need to go back in those years, right? 2000. Not a lot of tricker. It was starting to develop, but it wasn't something that we are used to see. It was starting. We were starting to add a lot of new trick into the form, a lot of experiment, I think. But while he was experiment a lot of new trick and a lot of new kick and all that stuff, he was still bringing an energy, some power, and some performance aspect that I don't think anyone could recreate today. He was moving so fast, and it's really impressive to like rewatch the video of him and all of that stuff. So that's why I call him. And another competitor for how clean they are, I would say Mackenzie Emery. I feel she is a competitor that always had her own style with all the and technique, all those stuff that she was doing. I feel that not because people didn't want to copy what she was doing, but I feel that she was probably one of the only person that was able to perform well what she was doing. Like all those wavy end while she was doing her end combo, or all the trick that was going like landing close to the ground and going up smooth. I think she's probably the only one that could ever do something like that and would look good. I feel like a lot of people tried to do those same hand technique and tried to do this a similar style, but she was one of the competitor that did the best. So that's why I call her. And for my fifth spot, um, I'm not gonna call one or the other. I'm gonna call both at the same time. For tricking wise, I'm gonna call Jacob Pinto and Michael Guthrie. Both of those competitors, I saw them compete when I was younger, and it was always like, who's gonna throw the craziest trick, right? I remember it's 2015 U.S. Open, I think, the ISK final. I think Jacob did like 5 gainer switches in this form, and then Michael Guthrie went after and did like, I think 4, but with a swing double at the end. I rewatched that final through separate videos, and for tricking, well, they were the best tricker on that era, right? And it was really impressive how they could add such difficult trick and all do them at the same time in the same form. Because sometimes when you're performing such a like long combo and it's hard to execute, well, you don't have the same stamina to perform the rest. If you're doing gainer switch times 4, gainer switch dub, well, you're not gonna get the same stamina. But both of these guys, even if their forms were maybe shorter than the other competitor, which I understand, I feel like they were the only one capable of throwing those like really scary trick and still hit a form with full energy at the end. So that's why I'm calling them in my top 5.
That's a solid list. It's a solid list. But what I'll add to it is I'll say this is where we talk about how hard it is to compare eras, right? Because your list, and this isn't any offense or anything, but your list is an 18-year-old's list, right? It's the people that you grew up and you had a chance to watch, right? Yeah. But as somebody who's just a little bit older and has gone back and watched the film, right? And I you know me, I'm a nerd about the sport karate history, right? My list looks a little bit different because I bring in some of those guys from the 90s that did the things that made what happens today possible, right? And you could even include in an argument, you could include like a Jean Frenette, who most people like wouldn't think of in this context, but like in terms of musical forms, like that's how it started. I don't technically put him in my 5, but just kind of informs you of the way that I think about this, right? Yeah. So I agree with you on Matt. Matt is my number 1. I've said on the podcast many times that Matt is the greatest CMX competitor of all time. When you put forms and weapons together with what he did with chucks, what he did with forms, he's the GOAT of extreme martial arts competition, in my opinion, right? So I've got Matt. And then I'm not going to go in order either because it gets really messy, right? But my two from the 90s that definitely make my 5, and obviously there's an easy argument because it was the great triumvirate, right? So obviously you can argue chat in this as well. But I've got Carmichael Simon and John Valera, right? And it's really hard, like, you know, you could put those guys all in the top 5. But for me, I'm a huge Carmichael fan because of Carmichael's creativity. And when I had Carmichael on the show, I learned things about Carmichael that I didn't know before, right? So number 1, there's the fact that, like, you know, the whole format of tricking that people use across the center of the ring, Carmichael invented that. And now it's like literally what everybody does. You know what I'm saying? So like that cultural impact in Carmichael doing that. And there's also the fact that, you know, from WMAC Masters, everybody calls him Kid Carmichael, right? But it wasn't just because he played Kid Carmichael in the show. When he was in the adult division in 95, that was his first season as an adult. So he came into an adult division that already had Mike Chat and John Valera. And then he won the big 3 that year, which at the time was like Bluegrass, Atlanta, and the Open or Diamonds or something like that. There was some combination of the big tournaments, and Carmichael won all of them in 95. So like to come up into a division with 2 like bona fide legends of sport karate in Chat and Valera, and to be able to get that many wins as an 18-year-old, that's crazy, right? So Carmichael's on my list. John Valera's on my list because I grew up watching Valera videos, right? His hand speed was ridiculous. The level of difficulty for the time that he was competing in was crazy. So I was always a big Valera fan, which of course made me a Rudy Raynon fan too. But he's in my top 5 commas. He's probably my comma GOAT. But anyway, and then I got to get 2 more spots, don't I? So Brendan Hewer was one that I grew up watching. I'm a huge Brendan Hewer fan. So I'd throw Brendan Hewer in there just because of the style that he had, the level of difficulty he could pull off. And then the 5th spot gets tough. A guy like Micah comes to mind. I think about Micah in that spot. Yeah, exactly. You're realizing that you forgot.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now. You say all those names. I'm like, it's hard to get a list of who's the top 5 competitor because I feel all the competitors that we just named are competitor with each. They each have a good and different style, and it's all they were all good in what they were doing. It's really hard to get a top 5.
And I had one more name that I wanted to mention, Kim Do. Because Kim Do, for 2 different reasons, right? As far as musical form goes, right? Everybody in recent memory talks about what Jacob Ellis could do with his Ironman form, which was phenomenal, absolutely, right? But before that, there was Kim Do and the Street Fighter form. You know what I'm saying? What Kim Do was able to do with all of that choreography and the gunshot, sound effects and everything. There was so much that was fun to watch about Kim Do and the innovations that he was responsible for in tricking. If I'm not mistaken, when he was a junior at the U.S. Open in 95, I might be falsely thinking 95 because we were talking about 95 for Carmichael, but it was one of those early years. I'm pretty sure that Kim Do was the first person to do a side swipe in a form because he was the one that went to the corner of the ring, said side swipe into the camera and then ran and did a side swipe back when running side swipes were a thing, right? So there's that. Obviously, we all know Terada, who you mentioned, rightfully so, was the first person to land snafu swipe. So that's a Terada thing. But I really think side swipe Kim Do might have been the first to land that. And then there's the classic videos of the trick battles between Kim Do and Steve Terada on stage at the U.S. Open, right?
Yeah.
So I could talk about this forever. But any other thoughts or reactions you want to give for that?
No, I think that's pretty much it. We named a lot of people there.
Yeah, we went way beyond 5, but that's okay. So yeah, kids, all of those names that we just mentioned, make sure as soon as the show is over, you go on YouTube, look up those names so that you can educate yourself about some of the history. And really the last thing here, Esteban, is I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to come on the show. It's been a lot of fun. We got to talk about your journey a bit, everything leading up to this big Warrior Cup win for you, and then also just have some fun talking shop about karate. So any final comments that you want to share with the audience before we head out of here?
Well, thank you guys for taking the time to be on the show, listen to me and Jackson talking about the weekend. It's a pleasure to be here, be able to express what I think about the sport and all that stuff. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, we appreciate you coming on, Esteban. So once again, everybody, if you want to catch the next episode of the Jackson Rudolph Podcast live, make sure that you're staying tuned to my personal social media because that's where I try to announce everything about when it's going to be coming through on Black Belt Magazine. So stay tuned to that. If there's any special guests that you want to request, make sure you drop that down in the comments or shoot me a DM. We can try to make that happen. This has been episode 121 of the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm Jackson Rudolph, and we'll see you next time.